Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can all hear me well. I see people are joining. With me in the panel, I already have Christian Ray. We are waiting for our EMA colleagues, and now please raise your hand and I will make you a co-panelist. So in order to, I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Vaccine Monitoring Collaboration for Europe. And today is a webinar about how to assess exposure to COVID-19 vaccines. And the key question will be how we can record and assess who received which vaccine once the vaccines are being rolled out. So this meeting will be recorded and made publicly available. Just in order for technicalities during this meeting, this is a webinar, so you cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you. So what we will do, if you have a question during the presentations, please use like the Q&A to write questions. People then can, we can immediately address them, or we will at the Q&A session come back to that. So that's your modality, and then once we are in the questions and answers session, you can raise your hand or you can pull your hand, and then we can unmute you to organize the responses. So the agenda for today: first, we do a bit of background to be able to everybody to be on the same page. My name is Miriam Sterkeboom. I'm currently the president at interim for the Vaccine Collaboration for Europe. We have today a distinguished panel of speakers. We have Christian Hay from GS1, the global office. He is a senior consultant in healthcare, and he will talk about medicinal products identification, IDMP, and supply chain. Then we have three colleagues from EMA, from the labeling office of the EMA, who will talk about the labeling requirements of COVID-19 vaccines. And then after that, we can have a Q&A session. The problem will be is that whereas we are fortunate to have Christian Hay with us to do the presentation, he will need to leave at 2:45. So any questions related to him, we will prioritize when we have that. So maybe just a bit of the landscape of where we are currently. We have had the great news this week that the COVID-19 vaccine developed by Pfizer with BioNTech actually is promising in having more than 90% efficacy. Of course, the full analysis still needs to be done, but that is very promising because so far we only had like phase 1 and 2 trials. So this is the first phase 3 trial to come with a very promising result. We see here on the left-hand side a graphic from countries that are currently involved in clinical trials, and you can see that the red-colored ones is where populations are included in clinical trials. And we can actually see is that there's very little current inclusion in trials in the European countries. That may change now that the COVID-19 epidemic is again back in. There is a second wave in Europe, but very little actually we know from the European population at the moment. On the right-hand side, you see a graphic from the, I think, very exciting London School of Hygiene trackers that they have created to keep track of development and clinical trials, and they give a living review of all the results and even the distribution. So here you see an overview of all the vaccines that are coming. What makes it very typical, this vaccine development or the COVID-19 landscape, is that we have a lot of novel vaccines. Novel in the sense that they haven't been utilized in men before, and so especially the RNA and the DNA platforms to bring the antigen, to use the antigen is actually quite novel. We see that the Pfizer is one of such platforms. So there are a lot of questions, and there are also a lot of promises with a lot of candidates already in humans. So either in phase 1, 2, or 3 currently occurring. So we are facing, I think, a timing where most of the vaccines that we have been waiting for may be quickly released to the market, and we need to be ready to actually monitor the safety of them and the effectiveness in real life. Here is another view of also from the London School tracker, the implementation landscape. So here we see on the first column is the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine, the platforms, the dosing. So most of the COVID-19 vaccines may have a 2-dose schedule. For Janssen, it's still to be established, but the Oxford vaccine that's also coming up quickly, hopefully, is also a 2-dose schedule. They have different type of way they are formulated, and also storage requirements. So one of the disadvantages that we currently are seeing in the Pfizer vaccine is that it needs to be stored at -70 because it's an RNA vaccine. So it's really demanding a lot in terms of the cold chain needs or requirements, which people are not, even in Europe, are not used to. So most of the time vaccines are being kept in normal fridges, which will be the case with the Janssen and the Oxford vaccine. So this will be challenging. I mean, there are a lot of preparations to roll this out, but it is a challenge. And the question, of course, will be when it's defrosted, like how can you apply that in a mass vaccination campaign? And you cannot inject something which is -70. So they need to defrost, but not too long to remain stable. So there will be a lot of challenges ahead of us. We cannot solve those now, but we do know that these vaccines will be made available rapidly in the current future. So we need the post-introduction monitoring readiness. There are several questions at the moment that we don't know. The current duration of efficacy and safety evidence is short, as only even in the Pfizer trials, I think not even half of them have 2 months of follow-up. So the duration of follow-up is short at the moment. Of course, they want to complete that to longer duration of follow-up, but currently we don't know, which means also that we only know very little about that safety information. So the need to monitor is there. This was recognized by the European Medicines Agency. They already wrote a tender to actually prepare protocols in May, and the Access project with many partners across Europe has been working on it and preparing protocols, template protocols to monitor effectiveness, safety, and also coverage. And all of those actually depend very much on the ability to establish which patient receive which vaccine, and also very clearly that we need to be able to distinguish the different brands of vaccines and the different ways that they may be produced to identify issues that may occur due to maybe production errors or immunization errors, or whether they are vaccine related issues. So we know what's coming up, a challenge to monitor this. Also, I think a lot of readiness, but today we will be talking about especially this last topic. How can we ensure that we can actually measure which vaccine is used by which patient? The persons that may be targeted, this is an overview from the SAGE recommendations. They have created a values framework, which is in the draft WHO guidance that you can find a reference to here. So every country at the moment will be establishing how they will roll out and which priority populations are going to be addressed first. Clearly, I think what we can see, priority populations, those that are at highest risk, those that work with people that are essential workers, and those people that may be high transmitters may be targeted. And in each of the countries, the NITEX will be establishing probably what is first. So we will hear that in the coming months. So I think this is summarizing what we will be talking about today. We have these COVID-19 vaccines that are in development and are coming up. And the question now is how to translate this to the real life implementation of the vaccination campaigns, where we don't know yet in which sequence they will be targeted and how they will be rolled out, whether that happens through GPs or mass vaccination campaigns. But the key thing is that we record well the vaccinations. So I would like to stop here with the introduction and give the word to Christian Hay from the GS1 Global Office, who will talk to us how medicinal products are usually identified and how this may be captured, and the potential of the IDMP. Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miriam. Do you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very honored to be with you this afternoon to give a short overview of what I know about our problem, our project. The next slide gives you, in short, who I am. Can you turn to the next slide, please? Thank you. Two things you need to know. The one is I work for GS1, and the other one is I'm chairing that committee in the ISO space, which has developed IDMP. And the rest is also interesting maybe for you. The next slide gives you maybe a view of what GS1 is. It is a very large standard development organization. You see all the dark countries have a local office there. We have millions of users around the globe. And when you go in the supermarket, all the barcodes you can meet are GS1 barcodes. We are, if you want so, responsible for traceability in various markets, including healthcare. The next slide gives you a flavor of what GS1 is. It is not one standard. It is a kind of a system of standards. On the upper part, you have a kind of semantic. We define worldwide what is a trade item, and a vaccine is a package of vaccine is a trade item. An ampoule, a vial, is a trade item. And we have also other identification keys and definitions to enable supply chain processes. In the middle, you have data carrier, so the mean to carry an information so that it becomes readable with a machine. A data carrier is per se something completely idiot. In the GS1 space, we give a meaning to that data carrier so that everybody around the globe can understand what is the content of that information of that carrier, and then access databases or document databases about the process in place. And the lower part gives you a flavor of some processes which we have also standardized in the sense that we are architects. We say how to do, we don't do it by ourselves like most of the standards. One of these is traceability and is of interest for us. The next slide is just a transition slide. It is important that you know that IDMP is not only identification of medicinal product, but also I have a dream. The next slide tells you a bit why I have a dream. It is because the driver are not from yesterday morning. The development of this set of standards, which I'm going to show you, started around 20 years ago already. And one of the main drivers is pharmacovigilance, but there are other drivers as well. Nowadays, I'm engaged in the European Unicorn project, which is a 4-year project aiming to facilitate or improve IDMP implementation across Europe. We have 12 NCA involved in that and a large number of other actors, because we consider the medicinal product life cycle completely from manufacturing to the use with the patients or the customer, depending the use of that medicinal product. The next slide gives you this the vision or the view of a wedding cake. I'm a lawyer, I'm not a technician at all. And many years ago, when I started to chair my group, I had the need to illustrate what we are doing. And I have a good graphist in Paris, and we developed together this so-called wedding cake. And you see here, you have 5 silos with their colors, and they represent each a standard, which number you have on it. And around that, you have small folders. These are the implementation guides with their respective numbers as well. So it is the combination, IDMP is a combination of substance identification, pharmaceutical dose form, the yellow piece, and measurements, quantities. And for that, we have also a standard. When you combine these things, you have a pharmaceutical product. A pharmaceutical product is kind of a receipt. It is not something you will find on the marketplace. And that's a bit the reason why we illustrated that with the pills, because a pharmaceutical product has a pharmaceutical dose form. And the pills fall in the box corresponding to the green silo. And this is a medicinal product. So pharmaceutical is blue, medicinal is green. And the medicinal product is a mostly national product. The blue one, the pharmaceutical, is a global number, global identifier, global description. And the green is national or local. And we have also developed, just on the side with this arrow, a technical specification illustrating how these IDMP standards apply to the supply chain. And that's the reason why you have this data carrier on the right. The next slide gives you an idea of how a pharmaceutical product is defined. Remember, IDMP has one of the very important tasks to address pharmacovigilance. Pharmacovigilance is complicated because you have, as you can see on the bottom, different brand names, but actually corresponding to the same pharmaceutical product, which would be here something with the ibuprofen. The need across the globe is, of course, much higher than just this slide is demonstrating. When you think that the WHO Competence Center in Uppsala, which is monitoring pharmacovigilance worldwide, they receive roughly half of the adverse event reports with the brand name of the product. Otherwise, they have just a broad description. So you see, they are really agile. They are using artificial intelligence to reconciliate these things from various markets. The pharmaceutical product identifier is going to support this task very strongly because we can link, as you can see on the next slide, we can link the object, the physical object on the bottom of the slide, up to the, say, marketing authorization, the medicinal product, and all the description for that. And then from there, we go up to the pharmaceutical product and its various components, which include substance. So if we have a vigilance issue, by starting with the medicinal product package below, you can retrieve the substance and its quantity and other useful information to improve pharmacovigilance and the speed of reaction in pharmacovigilance. The next slide is a historical slide. You know, I was in Istanbul maybe 10 years ago, I forgot exactly when, for some health IT work. And I purchased this box of aspirin for something like 45 € in a pharmacy. And that was perfectly identified with all the components we are seeing now in Europe because of the Falsified Medicine Directive. The reason why I show you this, it is because this medicinal product is, I would say, inexpensive for us. And that shows also that on the secondary pack, like this one, it is a possible inexpensive task to apply the DataMatrix, including a serial number. The next slide is showing you the status in Europe. It is not exactly the status today because, as we know, or you may know, the Falsified Medicine Directive is in force since February 2019 only. But the countries in green are all agreeing to use the GS1 Global Trade Item Number structure. There are some variants, but they have all the same structure. One country, the blue one, Italy, has a transition period, and I don't know if they are going to adopt the same as the rest of the continents, but nowadays they have another solution which I illustrated here. This is a so-called Bolino, and they have a very long track record by using the Bolino. The next slide gives you the same kind of information, but worldwide. You see, Italy is a bit an isolated country worldwide, but also we have quite a number of countries where we don't know exactly what system they are addressing. The green here don't say that it is mandated to use GS1. It might be in some places, but the countries are using it maybe on the voluntary base because the market has evolved such a way or differently. The next slide intends to show you a little bit how in practice this works if we think at, I would say an immunization product. When you go from the carton, the case, you know, we have a special identifier for that because it's a global trade item number also, but it will be different to the other ones. Similarly to when you go in the supermarket and you buy a 6-pack of Coke, obviously the 6-pack doesn't have the same barcode and GTIN, global trade item number, as the single bottle. And here in the packaging hierarchy, we have the same. So this is something which has also to be, I needed to explain a couple of times to my colleagues in various agencies across the globe how that works. So different packaging level, different global trade item number, but and different data carrier, because you have space, you put a larger data carrier on the larger carton. And the way it is structured is actually the same. And here you have the data and then the content as an example, how it could be on one of these packaging, starting with the secondary pack, the box pack with one vial. The next slide has a purpose to give you very little information about what is a data matrix and what is a QR code. And for that, I have some animation. If you can just click here somewhere to make, not to move the slide. Yeah, exactly. Here. The data matrix is a 2-dimensional code data carrier, and the reading device will calculate the meaning of all these dots by comparing them to the axis which you see on the left and on the bottom. It's like when you you look at a nice painting, you don't read the letters from left to right. Here, the device will capture an image and calculate the meaning of that image according to the axis. And if you click once more, just for the second one, yes, thank you. You have here a QR code, and you see a man on the street can immediately understand the difference between the two barcodes because the one has axis and the other one has the small squares. But the process is actually the same. The reading device will calculate the meaning compared to the squares. What the market has decided is worldwide to use the GS1 data matrix. GS1 is the language which you find in this data matrix on the top, with the 01 in brackets and a certain number of information following. And this language has been adopted sometimes by regulations, but if you think Falsified Medicine Directive in Europe has adopted this data matrix without saying GS1, but still data matrix, to be the identifier or the carrier of the information on medicinal product packages. You find the same in various other places in South America, in Asia, and wherever. Then the QR code has the purpose mostly to be used as the carrier of a hyperlink. And here you have an example. I scanned this to check, and you have the meaning of the contents on the right side. Well, if I want to conclude with my next slide, and I hope I will not be too long. From the experience we are currently living with UNICOM, with ISO, with GS1, and many other organizations as well, of course, we can say that if we are using the IDMP data structure, which includes the pharmaceutical product identifier, that will be the glue between the different markets for the same product, and the difference between different products, combined with the supply chain identification, namely the GS1 DataMatrix, which includes lot, batch, expiry date, and serial number when it is a secondary pack. Here we enable a number of things which are listed here. And actually, we are exactly in the, I would say, in the target for the pharmaceutical product identifier. The WHO Competence Center in Uppsala, which I mentioned before, has agreed to work on this and to implement that for this purpose as an emergency solution, if you want so, also in the context of their training in UNICOM. And the supply chain identifications is anyway mandatory according to the Falsified Medicine Directive. So that is my final word. And if you want to see my face, you turn the next slide and you have it in action. Ready for questions.
Thank you very much, Christian. That was very clear in a topic that is very difficult to many of us still in how this is exactly organized. So I think this was very informative. Are there any questions directly for Christian? And then we move on to the EMA discussion. But given the fact that Christian will have to leave at 1:45, and maybe if there is a question now, please raise your hand. Yes, so Catherine Salters, you should be unmuted now. Catherine, do you have a question? Catherine? Okay, it's in the questions pane, then let me go there. So does acceptance of GS1 standard imply that it's actually implemented in the country?
Yes, it does. Yes, yes. The GS1 identification system with the DataMatrix in particular is implemented, as I mentioned, across Europe. In the context of the Falsified Medicine Directive, it has become mandatory. It was already in place in various places, in various countries, with the exception of Italy. That's the only exception nowadays. But this is in place in every other European country.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Patricia Sadier. Do we know for sure that this standard will be adopted for all COVID-19 vaccines? I think that may also be a question to EMA later on.
Yeah, this is a question I cannot answer.
Okay, good. Any other question? Otherwise, we move on with colleagues from the EMA. There was a question from Ursula Kirchmeier also. Ursula, I will unmute you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to ask regarding Italy, because I work in Italy. You said that the codes are mainly compatible with the GS1 codes, but are in the Bolino, are there also the information on expiry date and lot or batch?
I'm sorry to say I don't know, but I suppose yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to move on then to our colleagues from EMA. Thank you very much, Christian, and thank you for contributing here. And the colleagues from EMA, I've made you panelists as well. So I don't know who will be presenting, but we have Alexios Carlatos, Esther Martinez, and Monica Prizzi from the EMA who will be presenting now. And I have your presentation loaded here, so yes.
Esther, this is Alexios Carlatos. Good evening. Esther, would you like to start?
And Esther, you can unmute yourself if it's okay. Esther, we don't hear you, I think. Can you make a sound? Otherwise, Alexios, can you do this, or one of your colleagues?
I'll try, although it's really Esther's. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you well.
This is Monica. Esther said she has unmuted herself, but she's still muted.
She shows unmuted to me, and also that her audio is on, so it may be her own computer, I think.
Maybe Esther, it is the EMEA headphones, maybe.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Yeah,
Yes.
maybe it was the headset because it was green. Apologies for that, and good afternoon. I hope you can hear me well. So yes, I can take you through the first slides, and then I will hand over to my colleagues Alexios and Monica. So, well, as Miriam said, my name is Esther Martinez, and I've been working at EMA for nearly 10 years now, and I've been the liaison between EMA and the European Commission for the implementation of the Falsified Medicines Directive. So as you can see on the screen at the moment, the Falsified Medicines Directive was published in July 2011. And the main goal of the legislation was to guarantee the safety and quality of medicines in the EU and to prevent the entry of falsified products into the legal supply chain. This Falsified Medicines Directive revolves around four main pillars, which are the ones you have in the slides. And today's presentation will focus very much on the first pillar, which is about the safety features. But just to complete the picture, I would like to briefly touch on the other three pillars, which are the second one, supply chain. So this legislation brought strengthened good distribution practices. Also, it introduced tougher rules on importation of active substances and reinforced controls and inspections of API manufacturers. And last but not least, the internet sales. With the introduction of this directive, we have a common EU-wide logo to identify legal online pharmacies. But as I said earlier, today's presentation will focus very much on the safety features, which have the aim to identify and authenticate individual medicine packs. So if we move on to the next slide, here I would like to talk a bit about what the safety features are. And the first thing I would like to say is that when we talk about safety features, we are referring to two elements. The first element is the unique identifier, which I will talk a little bit more in detail in a minute. And the second element is the anti-tampering device. The unique identifier consists of 5 data elements, which you have on the screen at the moment. It's a product code, a serial number, a national number, which is optional, and sometimes member states use it to indicate references related to reimbursement. Then you have a fourth element, which is the badge identifying that particular medicinal product lot, and then the expiry date. All these data elements, these 5 data elements, are encoded into a 2D matrix, as we've explained in the previous presentation. The second element is the anti-tampering device, as I said, and the anti-tampering device had the main purpose was to allow the verification of whether the packaging of the medicinal product has been tampered with. These two elements and the characteristics of the safety features are laid down in the delegated regulation on safety features. If we can move on to the next part of the slide. Yes, so the delegated regulation on safety features details the characteristics of them, how medicine authenticity should be verified and by whom. And this delegated regulation, which is number 2016/161, is in application since last year, since the 9th of February 2019. As mentioned earlier, this delegated regulation is already in application in most member states. However, there are 2 countries in the European Union which have additional time to implement this piece of legislation. And those 2 countries are Italy and Greece, because they already have systems in place to verify the authenticity of medicinal products. Just to say, I think we lost the presentation for a second. Thank you. Just to mention with respect to the anti-tampering device that there are no mandatory specifications detailed in the delegated regulation with respect to the anti-tampering device. There are some references to CEN standard, but it's really up to the manufacturers to consider what anti-tampering device is best and most suitable for that particular product. So moving on to the next slide. What I would like to explain here is an overview of how this medicine verification system introduced by the delegated regulation works. So the first thing I would like to highlight is that this is an end-to-end verification system with risk-based verifications. It is not a full track and trace system. So the way it works is that we have on the left-hand side, we have the manufacturers, which are printing the unique identifiers in the medicinal packs, and they are uploading them, the information on the unique identifiers are uploading them into a secure repository systems. It's also the manufacturer's responsibility to apply the anti-tampering devices to the packs. What happens next is that as we move on along the supply chain, the product will move from one wholesaler to another. In some cases, there might be a number of intermediaries. In some of the cases, there might be a more direct shipment to the end users or to the pharmacists. But the idea in this middle part that you can see representing the wholesalers in blue is that here there are risk-based verifications. And what I mean by risk-based verifications is that when the product is coming from an entity which is not the manufacturing or the marketing authorization holder or a person supplying on their behalf, then these wholesalers will have to verify the safety features. And this means reading the 2D barcode, the 2D matrix code, verifying that it's actually a code that can be found in the repository systems, and also verifying the integrity of the anti-tampering device. Once that verification is completed by the wholesalers, if it's successful, then we can move on to the next actors in the supply chain. And here we refer to retailers, pharmacies, hospitals, who are closer to the patient and to dispensing the product to the patient. So at the end of this chain, what will happen, if we take the example of a pharmacy, is that the pharmacist will scan the unique identifier. Of course, it will verify that the anti-tampering device is still intact. And if the result of that check is successful, then the product will be decommissioned, the pack will be decommissioned in the repository system, and it will be dispensed to the patient. Moving on to the next slide. This is just a summary of what I explained. So if we move on to the next slide, just to talk a little bit about what products are covered by the safety features. So what is really the scope of the delegated regulation on safety features? So the general principle is that all products subject to prescription, and this includes vaccines, and it will include, of course, COVID-19 vaccines, are supposed to bear the safety features. They shall bear the safety features. There are a few exceptions to these medicinal products subject to prescriptions, and you can see those exceptions listed on the right-hand side of your screen. This list of exceptions is what we normally call the white list. And this refers to certain category of products such as homeopathics, radiopharmaceuticals, IDMPs, advanced therapy medicinal products, medical gases, certain solutions, contrast media, and allergy tests and allergens. The reason why these categories of products have been included in this white list is because in their supply chain, there is sufficient reassurance to ensure that these products are not at risk of being falsified, or the risk is very low. Moving on to the next category of products that should bear the safety features, we have certain products which, even though they are not subject to prescription, they've been considered as being at risk of falsification, and this is what we commonly known as the blacklist. At the moment, this list is quite short. It's publicly available, and it's part of the delegated regulation. You can find it in Annex 2 to the regulation, and for the time being, it includes omeprazole to 20 milligrams and 40 milligrams. And last but not least, there is a third category of products which are subject to safety features. And these are medicinal products to which member states have decided to extend the scope of application of the unique identifier and anti-tampering device. What this means is that depending on the specificities of each member states have the discretion and the authority to decide which other products, and it could be non-prescription products, should be subject to the application of the safety features. And with this, I would like to hand over to my colleagues Alexios and Monica, who will tell you a little bit more about labeling flexibilities regarding the GTIN.
Thank you, Esther. Monica and Alexios, please go ahead.
Monica?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Can you hear
good.
me? Yes. Okay. So for the GTIN, The Commission has just published a memorandum of understanding on labeling and packaging flexibility, and in that document, which is a document which was agreed with the member state, they have included an entry for the GTIN, asking when possible to harmonize. As we have seen in previous presentation, for example, Italy have the Bollino, so at the moment they are not using the GTIN. However, we have had consultation with all the member states, and they now all of them have agreed that for the COVID-19 vaccines, they will use a single GTIN. So this will obviously facilitate the implementation of the serialization requirement. So GTIN will be accepted by all for COVID-19 vaccines. I don't know if Alexios want to add something. The memorandum is published, and I think in the presentation that's a link to the document on the website.
No, thank you
want to
very
add
much,
anything,
Monica.
Alexios?
I think that's it from our side. Serialization in general for COVID vaccines, it's still a requirement. And both the European Commission and the member states strongly encourage the companies to comply with this legal requirement, even within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Maybe I think this must be the last slide, and we are open to questions.
Thank you very much. I would like to just have a clarification question before we move also to the other people. So as I understand it now, and it's not easy to comprehend all of this, it means that the GTIN, so everybody will comply to the GTIN, and it means that we do have that carrier that can be interpreted. What I'm not sure about is whether this GTIN code will be on which packaging it will actually is required, whether that's on the box or on the, at which level, or do we go to the vial? Will the GTIN, or will the barcode be available on the vials, for example, or is it on the secondary packaging? So at which level of packaging is this required?
Yeah, according to our legislation, the unique identifier is required on the outer packaging, not on the immediate. So the GTIN as well will be also required only on the outer label, the outer carton. Now, if as we do with other products, if a manufacturer, a pharmaceutical company wishes to print the 2D barcode on the vial label, in that case, we will not object. It's just usually a question of space as well, especially when we're talking for vaccines where the size of the vials are really small. There are a number of required elements that need to be included, and sometimes there is not enough space for such codes. But nevertheless, we will not object. The legal requirement, though, is for the outer packaging.
Okay, so then I think we come back to the question from Patricia. Do we know for sure that this will be done by all of the COVID-19 manufacturers? Do you want to respond to that, Alexios?
Well, it depends on its manufacturer. We don't know what is the choice of each of the applicants coming with a COVID-19 vaccine. Actually, what we did from our side, as Monica explained, is to try to somehow harmonize the approach from the member states. As you knew, Italy and Spain had some issues, but even those countries, under these exceptional circumstances, decided to accept the GTIN. But of course, it remains at the discretion of each company to request for it or not.
Okay, thank you. For people, if you have questions, you can raise your hand. I'm trying to manage this. It's not an easy task, but I'm looking at the questions that are coming in. So Ursula, you want clarification that also Italy has agreed to use the GTIN for the COVID-19 vaccines. Is that correct, Alexius?
Correct. Yes, correct. Italy has agreed.
Okay. So a question from Patricia again. With this coding system, does the manufacturer add the country code, the NN, at the beginning of the chain? This means the manufacturer needs to know in which country the product will end up being distributed. Is that correct?
Monica or Esther, would you know the answer to that?
Maybe I
can I hear? Yeah, please,
go
Esther.
ahead. No, I just want to make sure I fully understood the question. Miriam, can you repeat again, please?
Yeah, I think it's related to this GTIN, and then with this coding system, and I assume this is GTIN, does the manufacturer add the country code, that is the NN, at the beginning of the chain? This means the manufacturer needs to know in which country the product will end up before being distributed.
So the way it works, so the NN is the national number. So I suppose what we are talking about here is any national specificity. So indeed, what happens is that the manufacturer would know on which market the product is going to be placed, and the information related to those markets will have to be cascaded, and that's why we refer to a repository system. So the idea is that the information is uploaded, but then it has to be transmitted to the national repositories of the countries where the product will be placed on the market. Does that answer your question?
Let me check with Patricia. I will unmute you, Patricia, if I find you. You are on the phone, so I have sent you a pin, Patricia, so you can unmute if you wish. Are there other questions from colleagues while Patricia gets online? Please raise your hand so I can unmute you. Rosa, you still? Rosa Gini, do you have a question?
No, I didn't. I raised my hand earlier. I was.
Okay. Can you lower your hands? Yeah, thank you.
Oh, it's me that should be. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so let me then go to a question that I was asking myself, basically, I think, which is the key to what we tried to discuss today as well. So I think today we got a very clear overview of the fact that there is a unique coding system. So in theory, we should be able to track exactly what is the brand of the vaccine, where it's been produced, the batch number, all of that information is required to be printed on the secondary packaging, that, if I understand correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong. And then the question is just going to be how at the moment of vaccination this can actually be captured, and especially if it's not on the primary packaging, so the vial, how do we make sure that it's actually being captured? So I think this is the crucial question, and that requires information also from the immunization registers and public health organizations. So I'm wondering if there's anybody who has an idea already from the countries, how this may be organized. And I know people are discussing. We had asked, I think we see Emil, maybe. Emil, is it anything you can talk about, Emil Kokinon? Or want to, start, what the view is there? Is there anybody who could explain how it's currently being thought about the implementation on a country level? Please raise your hand if you want to add to this. Emil, yeah, okay, good. I will unmute you, Emil. Yeah, go ahead, Emil, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I can have a go. We had this discussion when we were discussing the traceability tools in the core RMP 19 guidance that we're publishing tomorrow. and we were thinking of either barcodes or QR codes to have an electronic alternative to the old stickers for traceability. But and we had inquiry to member state to see how many can they use and what they're planning to do this. So the landscape in Europe is diverse. Some of them are planning to use the QR codes or the barcodes to link to the vaccination records directly. Some of them would want to use the stickers affixed to the vaccinees' records that will link then back to their health records. I think they're still discussing on how the actual immunization will happen. So I don't think we have a full picture at this moment, but we encouraged COVID vaccine manufacturers to include this type of tools. There were some discussion on links towards product information as well. So we'll see exactly how it's going to go. I think there was a question earlier with the codes on the vial, and I've seen as well there are different discussion whether it can be or cannot be done. So I think we'll have to see a little bit more when they prepare the submissions, how exactly are they going to use these tools. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Emil. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, and I'm going to dare that also with, I'm just going to check Hester de Melker. I've unmuted you actually, and I was wondering whether you can give a perspective from the Dutch, implementation, acknowledging that it's still in the discussion, but would it be possible to scan the barcode or the GTIN code?
You mean at the level of the primary container?
Yeah, but well, at the point of vaccination. So I'm looking for people, and maybe Mia Artama also from public health institutes, like how do people think of that, this GTIN code which is actually there, the DataMatrix is there, whether that's actually going to be scanned and linkable to the immunization or included in the immunization register, because it seems, I think, that there is a lot of information which is at least on the secondary packaging, and the question is, will that be captured actually in the patient record?
Yeah, Miriam, Hester here. Do you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. So of course it has our attention, this barcode, but I cannot give the answer yet how we are going to arrange that. So still a little bit fake, but of course we acknowledge that it is relevant to have this information, but whether it will be scanned or otherwise, that is also depending probably on this registry, which is still have to be implemented, and also which who is going to deliver the vaccine. So that's the status at the moment.
Thank you very much, Hester. And Mia, you have your hand raised. I unmuted you, so if you, you can speak from THL.
Yes, thank you, Miriam. This barcode follow-up is open in Finland as well. There are some problems because we don't know how can we organize the vaccinations. I mean, are there public places or just in certain places that are always where people get the vaccinations? This is open.
Okay, I know we are at, thank you, Mia. So I know we are at the time. Do we have other comments, questions? Let me check. Were there any other questions? Just to reassure people that we will make the slides available. The webinar is recorded and it will be linked on the, it will be made available on the website actually. I see a question from Ursula still. Do manufacturers plan to sell multiple packages, or will every vial be in a single secondary package? So basically, how big is the secondary package? How many units are in there?
From what we've seen so far, most of them quite bulky. It's not one by one.
Okay, so it will be bulky.
Yeah, it's not a single vial in a single carton. Yeah, it's a big quantities.
Okay.
Right, Monica? I don't think we've seen conventional.
Yes, they are big
packaging.
boxes.
Yeah.
No, we have
Yep.
big boxes with many vials. Yep.
So that will be a challenge then at the place of immunization, because they would need to scan the secondary packaging, so the box rather than the vial, which will be a challenge. Okay, I think this is, I thank everybody very much for their contributions and their participation. I think this clarifies a lot on what to prepare for, and also how to better implement it into the protocols, where it will be essential to capture the exposure. So we have learned that there is a unique code. It will be on the secondary packaging, and it will depend on the manufacturer whether they also include that on the primary packaging on the vial. And it will not be required. So I think all the organizations that are dealing with the implementation of the vaccination programs need to deal with that information if they want to track it well. Thank you a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.